How does PanCAN fight pancreatic cancer? Step by step. Walk with us on one big day to end pancreatic cancer at PanCAN PurpleStride. Show everyone affected that they're not alone and that together we can change lives. Your participation and fundraising make all the difference in advancing progress for patients. Join us on Saturday, April 29th in a community near you. Register for free today at PurpleStride.org.
Jonathan Frakes, I want to start with you. Star Trek Picard is coming swiftly to its conclusion. And
for the time being.
A lot of your arc this season has been, even though we didn't know it at the beginning, has been dealing with your son's death. And
spoiler alerts! They're going to be killing me on this one. Oh man!
You haven't seen it yet?
All right. I'm still watching Deep Space, whatever it is.
I beg your pardon.
Deep Throat 9.
How did the idea of Thad's death affect, and you're being separated from Troy? How did that affect the way you approached the character of Riker as compared to how you approached him 30 years ago?
Michael Chabon wrote the story about Riker and Troy leaving Starfleet and moving to the Nepenthe planet where allegedly it was going to heal their son. They took their son died, but our wonderful daughter, Kestra, lives on. And I gather that conveniently gave Terry Matalas, who was the showrunner for season 3, the idea that in most marriages, losing a child is obviously causes, Cirrus, if nothing else. And so I think what they did was they used that as I think it was convenient for them to have that to set up Riker being alone when when Picard calls him, Riker having said, it's a good idea. It's all cake that I'm here because, she sort of had it with me, that kind of. So I think it was convenient and appropriate, and it gave me plenty to play, and it set up Marina's entrance, which just happened essentially last week. Yeah. And she was spectacular, and we sort of made up in the prison cell as Amanda Plummer was threatening to kill her and me.
Yeah. What's the feeling on set? Does it feel like you're filming just more TNG, or is there, does it feel a little bit different this time?
That's an interesting question. I had been on Picard for the first couple seasons directing Patrick, so I was around him and around that show. And when Marina and I had that little episode together, Dorn came to visit and LeVar came to visit, so it had a little bit of reunion vibe. Yeah. Even then. The thing about our cast, which is not true of some casts, is that we are still very, for better or worse, embedded in each other's lives. We stood up each other's marriages, then going through the divorces and godparents to each other's kids, and it has it's been 36 years of friendship, so that getting back on the set with them wasn't like, oh my God, how have you been, or where have you lived? And none of that shit happened, which would happen on some other shows. So there was a familiarity. There was the advantage of this weird thing called aging, which for some reason we all seem to have gone through. And I think that influenced our behavior as characters, and it influenced our behavior as actors. But it was I thought much more important and effective with the characters, because it was gradual for us. We've watched each other get old, but the characters now hadn't seen each other. Geordi was off and Riker and Troy was so that I think really helped as Jeremy Strong famously said yesterday, it really worked dramaturgically.
Is there going to be more Picard?
I think a lot of people hope that there's some kind of continuation, and certainly, and you'll see in a couple of weeks, it's the pump has been primed.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We talked about this a little bit the last time you and I spoke. You played one of the first Ferengi in Star Trek. You were in the first episode, and they were meant to be the big bad characters of the show. They were supposed to be the main villains, and they wound up coming off a little bit silly and a little bit, they weren't really that scary. But then you came on Deep Space Nine, and suddenly there were still some comical things and still some silliness, but suddenly the Ferengi were much more of a going concern. That was you imbuing life into the Ferengi, right?
That is absolutely correct. I probably answered this for you before, but I'm happy to do it again, which is I am shamefaced at the performance I did in that original episode of Next Generation. I wish Jonathan had given me some notes about what I was doing wrong at the time. He was standing there after all. And
He wasn't the director yet, though.
No.
But it was a god-awful performance. Actually, watching Picard, the actor who played the Ferengi, I said to Kitty right after that scene was over, that's the way I should have played it. That's the way I should have played it. So my whole raison d'etre in Deep Space Nine was to resurrect the Ferengi, make them three-dimensional, take them out of the one dimension that I had created for them. Mostly me. There were others, of course, but mostly me. And it was my attempt to do that. I've gotten feedback from the writers that I often was too heroic, if that's the right word, for Quark. And they soon found that if they wanted something that was cartoonish, and that's the wrong word, silly, they would give that piece of business to Max and to Ron, and they'd let me go on my heroic, hero's path.
Hero's journey, dude.
What?
The hero's journey.
Hero's journey. But we must also we have to thank the writers. The writers obviously. I mean, Michael Piller. What was the raison d'etre to put a Ferengi in that show? They must have thought there was potential there for the species, and so the writers did their best to give me the sort of things that made Quark and the Ferengi, as they did for the others, a much more three-dimensional point of view. Like Picard, the Ferengi were about family, and we pushed that envelope over and over for 7 years.
Yeah. Now you are other than Jonathan, you are the only other person here that has been on modern Trek as well.
Modern Trek? What do you mean by that?
New Trek. You were in Lower Decks.
Oh, Lower Decks. Okay.
Yeah. So as an animated character. So a couple of questions.
Might be more accurate to say Billingsley is the only person who's been abandoned by contemporary Star Trek.
No.
Excuse me, John. Excuse me, John. Hold on. You're not the only person here who's in that category.
Kitty and I have both been abandoned.
Thank you, John.
by
Thank
Star
you
Trek.
very much.
Don't bury the lead, Rick, is what I'm saying. You know, people clamoring for Kitty and Billingsley must be heard.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Let us remember
I agree.
that
In fact, I think there should be a spin-off with just the two of you. The Bajoran minister and Phlox, I think.
Old fat Phlox, I'll tell you my
Can I
pitch.
be the Vorta? I'd rather be evil. That would be more
the
fun.
word is dead.
Yeah, but you could be the clone because your Vorta self was killed. So you could be the next clone in the series.
I have a series idea, which is very similar to Edgar Buchanan and Petticoat Junction, where old fat Phlox sits in a rocking chair at the beginning of each episode. I'm back when I was here. I tell you, you're a galactic doctor. All sorts of wild things happen. And then flashback music plays, and you see young, handsome people run around acting out the adventures of young Dr. Phlox.
Well, I have a similar idea where we just do cheers. After all, we already have Norm. So,
So when you came in to do Lower Decks, did you go into a studio or did you record right in your own?
we went to a studio. We recorded individually. I was there with the headsets on, having the director and the producer giving me notes, not that many notes. And they were an incredible, supportive group of people. At one point, I asked to change a line, which was taboo on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And they, when I told them what the line was, they ate it up, and that's what ended up in the show.
That's great. Do you remember what the line was?
Yeah, something about something. There was some line about it. It was hurting me in my work, and I said, no. It shouldn't be me. It should be about. It's hurting my customers. And they thought, oh, that's so much better. So,
Not only had it been 20 some odd years since you had played Quark, but you weren't physically playing Quark. It was your voice. So how did you get back into the Quark mode? I've heard a tale that you brought teeth with you.
that's exactly the answer. The teeth did it all. It wasn't me. Well, it was simply the teeth. The teeth were instrumental.
Oh, I'm so glad he has them handy.
But and it wasn't Quark. Yes, it looked like Quark. It sounded like Quark. I was playing the part. But with all due respect to Lower Decks, which is a wonderful, wonderful show, and I'm very grateful for bringing myself and Kira back. Absolutely grateful. But it was a much more comedic Quark. And as I told you earlier before, that wasn't my métier. I wanted to play a more heroic Quark.
Sure.
Much to the chagrin of not only my producers, but also my directors. I remember Jonathan sort of looking askance every now and then with some of the choices I made.
No.
Yes, you did. And a wah-wah sound from the trumpet every now and then.
Wop, 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 wop.
Are those teeth original Quark teeth? Like, were they original?
they're not.
They're not. Okay.
Yeah. Somebody in the last 2 months before we ended the show stole my teeth. So I walked in my trailer and went, "Where are the teeth? They're always in the same place." They weren't there, and Michael Westmore had to recreate what he'd done, and those went back to props or makeup, and these teeth I had to make because 20 years after being the character, I put the makeup back on in England, and I thought, well, I need to have a set of teeth to go with it. So I made those teeth. That's why sometimes on Lower Decks, it sounds like Quark, sometimes it doesn't because the teeth aren't exactly right.
And we gotta give credit to our niece, Harmony, who built the teeth for him.
Yes.
I was just gonna say you made the teeth, Armin. No, you didn't make the teeth.
No.
My niece, who was taking a makeup school, a school that was recommended by Michael Westmore and that Karen Westerfield had gone to, I asked, yes, and taught it. And I said, "Can you do this?" And she said yes. And she did a great job, but they're not the same teeth.
Kitty, so
Yes.
you were on 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine.
Some games.
And in the first one, which was Sanctuary, you played a Bajoran minister.
Mhm.
What was the audition process like for a guest star on Deep Space Nine? Who was in the room? I'm assuming you were given some of the minister's lines. Do you remember anything that you
Yeah, I was given a scene to read, and I walked in, and it was Rick. I'm trying to remember who directed that episode.
Probably David Livingston.
No, it wasn't David. It
Odds
was-
are.
It wasn't David. It was who did we just see at Daryl's? Who also directed me in Judging Amy?
Oh, it was Jim Conway.
It was Jim
Oh,
Conway.
Conway.
Yeah, it was Jim Conway, Junie Larry Johnson, Ira, a couple of other people.
Okay.
I read my scene. They said thank you. I got up and I left. And at that time, they really just they had kind of a thing about hiring spouses. So I was shocked when I got hired for the job. And frankly, most of my television career is playing smart-ass judges. Thank you, Jonathan Frakes. And doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. So it was fun. Although Minister of State, smart-ass judge, sort of similar.
So your second role was you played Avorta in the 5 years later in the episode Tacking into the Wind. DS9 was winding down. It was almost to the end. You're in the episode for about 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes. What was the makeup process like for Vorta? Did they have like a pre-made thing that they put on you, or did they have to mold?
There are pieces, but the thing about the Vortas is there's a lot of pieces, and then they paint your face and then do you almost can't see them, little tiny purple veins sort of all over your face. But it was the wigs that were uncomfortable, because I had 3 hair pieces on and purple contact lenses over my eyes. But the better story is how I auditioned. We ran into Jeff Combs today. I went into audition and I said, "You have any advice about Vorta?" And he said, "Yes, just flare your eyes and be obsequious." I said, "Okay." And that's what I did.
Perfect.
What did Ira say to you after he saw the performance?
He said he was sorry that they hadn't seen me before, because they kept trying to find a woman who could be evil in the obsequious way that Vorta are. And then I went on and did some Vorta in a game, so that was fun.
Well, Phlox is my favorite character in Star Trek Enterprise. I always enjoyed him.
Good that you were one of the producers.
I love to watch Phlox eat, if you can believe that. I think he eats with such gusto, and I love to watch it. What is your secret to good food acting?
Well, there's a technical conceit, which is, you make sure that if you're going to eat, I try and have like one establishing shot before the scene starts, where it's like, now play the scene. If you're eating all the way through the scene, you got to match it on the turnaround, and it's like, boy. So actually, it's interesting because nobody's ever talked about that. I always thought, they always asked me what I wanted to eat. It's like, well, whatever it is, I'm going to go to the minimal amount necessary to actually consume it. So I don't really care. I didn't really eat very much. I just.
Are you a spit bucket actor?
No. Sometimes it's also if you're holding the food, and if depending upon the nature of the take, you can get away with this. Sometimes it's really what the shot they're going to use is, and I'm just making a face. I don't have anything in my mouth. I don't want these tricks to get out, because this is something I'm saving for my book. But all right. But he's what I liked about Phlox is Phlox loved everything. He liked sex, he liked food, he liked wine, he liked garbage, he liked space, he liked hair. I mean, he was a passionate fella.
Was that just a sense of exploration that he loved, or is that some of John Billingsley creeping?
I don't know. I mean, you always hope you're finding something that's unique about your own personality that can kind of play into the role. I make jokes about this all the time. I have, for various reasons, I have played more assholes in my career and lunatics. Phlox was refreshing to me. It was one of the few opportunities I've had over an extended period of time to play somebody who was big-hearted, irreverent, philosophical, kind. I mean, all the things that frequently, as a child molester, serial killer, you don't get to manifest. So, it was a great joy. And if the show had gone on, I get this question a lot: what would your hopes have been? It would have been interesting to see more about Phlox in relationship to the Denobulan culture. I think that was a society, and we haven't really seen that much, I think, in subsequent iterations of Star Trek about Denobulan society. The little I learned about it as they began to kind of give you little bits and pieces, it sounded like a fascinating world. I thought it was a monastic world when I got the part. It was like, why, we've never seen a Denobulan. There must only be 8 of them left. They don't fuck. And so I'm off, I've decided to leave. It's like, it turns out the planet was so crowded, I got elbowed out. I actually was the most potent of these Star Trek characters. I had, uncounted children, I believe.
But let us move on to PanCAN.
Yes.
Yeah, let's go to PanCAN.
Yes, let's talk to PanCAN. So
PanCAN
is Jonathan and I talked about this last year. It's the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. I'm going to be walking in Hartford, Connecticut.
Great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Hartford is one of, is it 80?
60.
60.
One of 60.
60 locations across the country.
Yeah.
Yes, last year when Kitty was walking in Los Angeles, I was walking in Kansas City.
John Billingsley, Armin, and I will all be walking in LA at the Santa Monica Pier, which is a great place to start. And we'd love to welcome you to our team and have you walk with us. It'll be great. And
there are 59 other cities where the walk takes place. When I was in Kansas City last year, thousands of people showed up. It was so incredibly inspiring. And we need people to walk, we need people to raise money, we need people to donate so that this cancer, which is becoming the second most lethal cancer disease in medicine, needs to be eradicated. It would be great if we had a tricorder to eradicate it, but we don't.
We've got a Trek Against Cancer team. So
Right.
if you throw some money our way, we're trying to get to $90,000 this year as a team.
And 19 million for the entire effort.
Right.
It's something that I would just love to make sure gets talked about, because I think this is the thing that to me was what lured me in above and beyond the fact that Kitty and Armin, I would do anything for them. And then Jonathan was there and I got to see Jonathan. I'd love to hear y'all talk about what it's accomplished. And I think that's, my mother died of pancreatic cancer. And when she got the diagnosis, boom, it was 3 months. And there was no chance given at all. I think it was a 4% survival rate.
Probably less, John. Probably less.
My mother passed away in 1990. You guys have
less.
experienced this.
Before you do that, Armin,
yeah.
Can you just share your story with us? Because my watchers, listeners haven't heard your story yet.
19 years ago, I didn't feel very well. My doctor just happened to have an appointment open the next day. I had been visiting Cecily Adams, who played Moogie, in the hospital the day before, and her childhood nanny said to me, "You need to talk to somebody. Don't worry about her, worry about yourself." And so I saw my doctor on a Friday. I really started to feel sick over the weekend. My urine turned brown. On Monday, we were at a funeral when my doctor called and left the message that you have to go to the hospital right now. Your kidneys and your liver are shutting down. And by the time they took me in an emergency at Cedars-Sinai, I had turned yellow. 19 days later, I came out with half a pancreas, half a stomach, 2 feet less of intestines, no gallbladder, and 28 missing lymph nodes. And I had a 4% chance of making it 5 years. And here we are 19 years later. And I'm here to tell people this is doable. You can do this.
And if I may add to that incredible story, and Kitty is very lucky and a survivor. When she was diagnosed with this, there was a doctor who told her that she was going to die. Just get ready for it. You're going to die. She had another doctor recommended to her who said, "No, we're going to do our best for you." We didn't know who to turn to. We didn't know which advice to take. We were quite sure we didn't want to stay with the doctor who said she was going to die. Sure. One of the great things about PanCAN is if you get in touch with them when you're given the diagnosis, they will reference you to which doctors you should see. They will tell you about what options are open to you. You're not in the dark, which is what we were. And perhaps, John, your mother was the same way. And
no
John,
question of, alternative doctors.
Yeah, same with Daniel, exactly.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about PanCAN. It helps people get through the initial, oh my God, I'm going to die, which is not true. And we're happy to say that the survival rate has gone from what John said, 4%, now to 12%, and in fact has inched up this year from 11 to 12. It's a small percentage, but we are making progress. And the only way we can continue to make progress is if people march, people collect money, people donate, so that doctors can do research into this and find cures.
And PanCAN won't just help the patient, they'll also help the family, which is really important. Yeah. He worked harder than I did.
And 1% represents how many people? I mean, and that's what's so important is the percentage may seem small, but 4% to 12% is thousands and thousands of lives that were saved. And this is, I believe, the second year in a row there's been a 1% increase, 11% to 12%. I mean, again, that number doesn't seem intimidating, but when you consider what that means in terms of life saved, it's quite remarkable what they're doing.
Right, and as was true for both your mother, Jonathan's brother, when you are finally diagnosed, it's usually too late. The symptoms just show way too late. And the only way that I know of, and there may be other ways now, but at the time, the only way to save a person's life was that operation that Kitty just told you about, just called the
Which is also, forgive me, I'm usurping your function, but I learn more every time Kitty and Armin talk. So a question that I wanted to ask, what also PanCAN does to raise awareness about the symptoms so that people, because my mother, she had no idea that it could even conceivably be cancer. The things that were troubling her, she thought it had to do initially with a sustained bout of indigestion, for God's sake. Could you talk a bit about what the work they do that kind of raises awareness, what that means?
Here's the thing, I had a lower back pain. I always have lower back pain. I'm a jock. I had indigestion. That's true of so many patients. One of the extraordinary things that PanCAN has done is they've educated doctors and people who have pancreatic cancer in their family. Get genetic testing if you have a first-degree relative. Have the relative, like at the time I was diagnosed, people didn't get genetic testing. It's important. It's really important. Are you over, PanCAN says to doctors, if somebody's over 50 and they all of a sudden develop diabetes out of nowhere, you should get tested. You should get checked. There's a lot of ways that you need, that the PanCAN has worked not just on changing the science of treating somebody who already has it, but detecting it early, because early detection is the ball game. It's totally the ball game. And there's certain groups of people who are more likely to get pancreatic cancer, and PanCAN educates doctors about that. It's really important what they do.
We've got to educate the people too, to go when they go in there for their annual checkup with their doctors. They should say all the things that you just mentioned, that I didn't know, but I am genetically predisposed to this, and I also have prediabetes. All the things that now are flags we're not up before.
Right.
From my understanding too, that one of the great goals of raising this much money is that we can find a simpler way to detect the cancer earlier in a blood test or something that'd be part of when you do your blood work the day before you go to the doctors, which would be awesome.
That's right. And another thing is, this work goes on. We spoke to another Star Trek actor the other night at Yuri's night, who shall remain nameless.
Not the actor, the spouse of the actor.
The spouse of the actors, both brothers and father died of pancreatic cancer. So I said, we're going to New York next week. Let's talk. Let's figure out who you need to talk to at PanCAN. Let's get you hooked up, because you guys should be tested.
Yes, if you have pancreatic cancer in your family's history, you need to be tested so that you can tell doctors just what you said, Jonathan. Please look for markers for this because my family has this. They do that with other cancers. When you sit there in the office checking off everything that you've had or your family's had, there's all those things, all those questions which you need to answer. But questions for pancreatic cancer aren't necessarily on that list. And what PanCAN and we all need to do is to make sure that people are looking for this, because as we said earlier, once you're diagnosed, it's rather late in the disease.
Sure.
PanCAN raises money and funds a lot of research into new treatments. They
Patient outreach.
There's patient outreach. We talk to Congress all the time to try and raise money for pancreatic cancer from the federal government's budget in health. They help develop new doctors that are coming up. They work on programs to, as I described before, getting early detection. They work specifically with marginalized economic communities to make sure that they get help. It's extraordinary what they do.
As the $90,000 that our team is seeking to raise, as I recall, would hire, in effect, a number of researchers who are going to be, on the front lines of doing this work.
And research into pancreatic cancer invariably leads to successes in other cancers as well. So you're not just giving to this particular cancer and our particular cause. You're going to the overall effort to cure cancer.
One of the things I love best about PanCAN is they were instrumental in convincing the CDC and the FDA that if somebody is in a clinical trial and it's not working, that they should be able to move to a different clinical trial. I lay that at PanCAN's feet. I'm so proud to be associated with this organization. I've seen what it's done for friends of mine who've been diagnosed. It's amazing.
And
We're
Jonathan,
so,
where are you
we're so
walking?
lucky to have you. We're so lucky to have Kitty.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Thank you.
I'm in. Where do I walk?
Yeah, where are you walking? Because you're not walking with them in LA, right?
Well, first of all, you can see why. Now I'm working at a con job in Calgary.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll be
You'll be
I'll be walking the streets.
communicado.
We will.
And just for anybody who missed our conversation back in November or October, whenever it was, just recap what your connection to pancreatic cancer is, because we've mentioned your brother a little bit.
Yeah, well, Daniel was jaundiced by the time we took him into the hospital, and they actually opened him in that Whipple style, assuming they could operate, and they opened that bucket, cut open, saw that it was so far gone, they closed him up. They came out and they said to me and to my mom, he's inoperable and he'll be lucky if he lives for 6 months. And that was it. That was not, here's some treatment, here's a good idea. It was very much prepare for his death. And it was mind blowing, as you can.
Monstrous.
Yeah.
And that was Eliza was born a week later, so that was 25 years ago. And it was, I guess, 3 or 4% at that point.
Wow.
I will say there's a woman in Orange County who's my hero, Roberta Luna, who's associated with PanCAN. She's a 20-year survivor, and she's inoperable. She hasn't had an operation, and here she is. She's still with us, and she's what I use as a role model to say to people, look, there's hope.
And what we've been told is that if you're cancer free after the Whipple for 5 years, there's a very, very good chance that you will survive more. You can get it again, but there's a very good chance that after 5 years, you won't have pancreatic cancer again. So we want to get people to that 5-year mark and beyond.
Yeah.
I also think it's important to reinforce, underline, highlight, amplify the fact that the PanCAN world provides people like Kitty or us to talk to them, to talk to their families, because that's Armin or Kitty just said it's harder on the family in many ways, because the unknown is brutal.
We need to wipe it out, all of them. We need to wipe them all out. And science is progressing, but we need to help them. We need to help them.
And you guys can help us. Join our team.
Yeah.
You can get on social media, tell people about it. Go to www.PurpleStride.com and look for Trek Against. And we would appreciate it. You come walk with us. Billingsley and Shimerman and Swink would love to have you walk in Santa Monica with us. Yeah.
And I mean, it's also, I think it's we're speaking specifically to a Star Trek community, and that perfectible future that we all strive for is rooted in the eradication of so many things. And certainly I'm sure our fans can appreciate that the vision that Roddenberry had this is central to the success of that mission.
Precisely, John.
Nicely put.
Yes.
And if you're watching this or listening to this, all the links will be in the show notes. And if you're watching it on our website, it'll be in the website description. So it'll be easy to find. And there's a donate link to PanCAN itself on our homepage. So,
but please, if I may, please donate to Trek Against Pancreatic Cancer, because as John said earlier, our goal is to raise $90,000. We're long. We've only gotten about 1/6 of that so far,
and we're very competitive.
And we're very competitive.
We are.
So I'm not saying which of the 3 of us you should, or the 4 of us you should donate to, but I am saying
we're looking for a total. We're looking for that total.
Yeah.
We're looking for a total.
Yeah.
And what we don't get, Jonathan, we'll spend the rest. But please do donate. You've heard why. Take upon yourselves to just take a moment. If it's $5, $10, $15, $15,000, all of that.
Does
is-
PanCAN have a recurring donation possibility?
Yes, you can do that. Yeah, I think you
One
can.
of the great things as somebody who helps run a not-for-profit that we always love is when somebody makes a small recurring donation. It's something that
Yes.
you know that you can consistently do. And huzzah, we get to know that we've always got that coming in from the marvelous so-and-so.
Sure.
So
Yes, as
that-
someone who used to run a theater, I know that too.
the recurring donation. Doesn't it always look like we got a recurring donation?
Just a little hit of endorphins every month when you get that
Exactly.
money. Yeah.
But it's like getting your pension.
And you know what? You've done something good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've done something incredibly good, and if I may, something humane.
And if you can't donate, then put it on your social media and say, I can't help, but maybe you can. Because that's
Yes.
something too.
Right.
Armin Shimerman, Kitty Swink, Jonathan Frakes, and John Billingsley. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been delightful.
And if I may reword a motto that we've all heard a million times,
Yeah.
prosper and live long.
Ooh, I like it.